Good afternoon. It is Sunday, the 19th. Let me look at my calendar to be sure. Yep, April 19th. And just had some thoughts on my mind that I wanted to share with you and get off my chest. And I should probably do this with each of my videos now. Let me just start by warning you if you don't like salty language, you might want to move on because I'm not if I have in the past, I'm going to stop even trying to pull punches when it comes to saying what I really want to say. So, yesterday, the 18th, my wife and I went down to Norfolk, Virginia, to the Norfolk Scope for the Virginia International Tattoo. Can you see that there? Okay. Now, some of you are probably saying, geez, Floyd, what kind of tattoo did you get? If you don't know what a military tattoo is, look it up. I'm not going to spend time here with a history lesson on it. So, we went down there for that, and we're supposed to be celebrating 250 years of America, starting in its beginnings in Virginia. Okay? And I want you to think about that. Think about what that means. 250 years of America, of Virginia, of constitutional government, individual liberty, the experiment in self government. Those of you who are on my page, who are friends, who aren't just here to spy on me, but those of you who are my friends, you know why America exists and how it came to be, because you've actually learned some history for yourself, which frankly nowadays seems to be the only way to learn history because your school system sure as hell isn't going to tell you what it is. And you're not going to get it from the evening news or the local activist. So you have to do the reading and researching and studying yourself. But you understand, you know why there is the United States of America, how it came to be, why it existed. All right. So, with that in mind, just remember we're talking about 250 years of celebrating America. Now, I want you to think about the irony of that, as I have. We now have the Commonwealth of Virginia run by a communist and her acolytes, a bunch of left leaning, woke, sick individuals who seem to think that you have a right to do all sorts of things. And I think that's the key, your rights. Now, again, this goes back to the founding of the country and what our founders determined and codified by putting it in writing and having it in a form of government called a constitutional republic. They determined that we have certain rights. Now, you and I can discuss whether those rights come from God or whether they come from simply your humanity and you're born into it, or they're given you by some superior being. That's a discussion that can be had if you want to, but that's not why I'm here. The fact is, we do have certain rights. And we now have a government in Virginia, and there are similar governments across the country. I mean, you got Newsom in California, you got Hochul in New York. What the hell's the guy's name in Pennsylvania? My buddy's always reminding me of it. I can't think of his name now. Anyway, so you got the idiot in Illinois, Chicago area. So there are governments throughout the country, state governments, that are far from being the individual liberty and constitutional rights government that this country was founded on. And here we're having a celebration in Norfolk. Now, I don't know. My emotions ran the gamut last night. There's a strong sense of pride. Um, there was anger because I know the history of the country. I've read a few books about it, and sadness, profound sadness, to see what's going on around us right now. And it's not just the politicians. I mean, again, you expect politicians to be the crooked sons of bitches that they are. That's why they became politicians. But the idea that so many of our fellow Americans, people born here, not people who came here from somewhere else, and you could almost excuse to a certain degree their ignorance. They came here with certain ideals and ideas of what America was and why you should come to America. But people who were born here, who grew up in America, the sadness, it just how ignorant, how downright stupid most Americans are. The word rights gets tossed around a lot, and they have no freaking idea what a right is. It's, well, you have a right to be transgender. You have a right to have the American people, through their tax dollars, pay for you to have your dick cut off so you can pretend you're a girl. Now, most of the people I know, conservatives, right wing, whatever you want to call them, we're not certainly, sure as hell not Democrats. We're not part of the woke crowd. But most of the people I know could give a shit. They don't care. If you want to cut your dick off, Mr. America, and pretend you're a girl, knock yourself out. I really do not care. That's your business. It's up to you. Here's where we draw the line. Here's where I step in and say, enough. You do not have a right. There's nothing in the Constitution. There's nothing in the Declaration of Independence, nothing in any of our founding documents that says you have a right to have other people pay for your delusion. Okay? I don't know how much simpler to make that. You do not have a right to demand that other people pay for you to do weird shit. There it is. Now, one of the rights we see the communists here in Virginia trying to take away now is actually codified in our Constitution, in the Bill of Rights. In fact, it's so important, it's the Second Amendment. You have a right to self-defense. You have a right to keep and bear arms. There it is. You have a right. Now, you might say, Mr. and Mrs. Liberal, you might say, well, there's nothing that says you have a right to have a gun. You have a right to self-defense. Now, little liberal blue-haired women out there, and that seems to be a big part of the problem anymore, is the liberal women in this country. Let's pretend, just for the sake of argument, that I decided I don't like you. I don't like you to the point that I wish to do you harm. Not for any other reason than simply because I want to hurt you. And I'm bigger than you, and I'm stronger than you. Even at my advanced age, I could still do some things to you that you might not appreciate. How do you defend yourself against that? If you can't defend yourself physically, if you're not a professional boxer, you're not a Bruce Lee type martial artist, what are you going to do? Do you have a right to protect yourself? Do you have a right to self-defense? I think you do. So did the founding fathers of our nation. That's why they put it in the Constitution. That's why it's the second of the first 10 amendments. So yes, you do have a right to self-defense. You do have a right to keep and bear arms, because even back then, when our founders put this all together, they recognized that there are people among us who are weaker than others, physically and otherwise, who might need some sort of tool, some help in defending themselves. And there are certainly certain parameters around that, when you can do it, how you can do it, where you can do it. I mean, I've had a concealed carry permit for years. And I often think about, well, what if I'm presented with a situation where I have to employ that weapon, when I have to draw it from its holster and use it? Can I just willy-nilly start throwing bullets down range because somebody was threatening my life or my wife or my children? No, there are certain rules around that. I have to be conscious, as do police, as do others who carry firearms. I have to be conscious of what is downrange, what is behind or beyond that target that I might be shooting at. Criminals don't give a shit. They don't care. And you see it in the news all the time. Multiple shots fired, multiple people wounded or killed. One or two guys firing shots at each other or someone else in the crowd. They don't care. You and I do care. We have to care. If I have to draw and employ my weapon for self-defense, I'm not doing it just to be throwing lead down range. I want to make sure I'm going to end the threat. I don't know why that seems to be so difficult for some people to understand, but apparently it is. So we have to talk about it. But here in Virginia, Governor Spamberger has decided that you do not have that right. And many of the folks in the General Assembly who share her views have decided that you do not have that right, even though it's in the Constitution, even though it is codified, even though it is quote unquote carved in stone. No, you don't really have that right. Those guys way back then, they didn't know what they were talking about. They couldn't possibly have anticipated that we would have multiple round magazines or semi-automatic weapons. You've heard the stories. You've heard the arguments, specious that they may be. So there you have it. That's what we're dealing with. And so the rights that actually are in writing, that are part of our founding documents, you're told, no, you don't. You don't have those. That's not real. That's not true. You can't do that. But, Joe, if you decide you want to cut your dick off and pretend to be Josephine, you have a right, and there's that word again, you have a right to expect others to pay for it. No, hey, Josephine, you can't afford to do it yourself. That's a pretty expensive operation. So you have a right to step up and say, well, Mr. and Mrs. America, Mr. and Mrs. Virginia, you must pay for it. I have a right to have you pay for it with your tax dollars. And so the liberals, of course, one of their responses will be, well, it's only a penny on a dollar. What's the big deal? I don't care if it's half a penny on the dollar. It's my money. I get to decide where it goes, not you. I don't have to play your game. I don't have to take part in your delusion. And again, if you want to pretend you're something other than what you are, have at it. I really do not care. But you do not have a right to expect me to participate in your delusion. No, you don't. You simply do not have that right. You can hope that I will. You can be appreciative and thankful if I do, but you don't have a right to expect it. You certainly do not have a right for me to pay for it. Whether it's 1 penny on the dollar, half a penny, or 0.00001% of a penny. You have no right to that. And so I'm watching this show last night, and I'm again, there's a sense of pride. You see the sacrifices that have been made, and there have been many, to create this country, to grow this country, and to maintain this country. And then you look at where it is now and what's happening to it and the destruction from within. I mean, we can sit here and complain about the Somalis or the Muslims or whoever is coming in here from outside the country and what they're trying to do. And that's a legitimate concern. But how about the people who live here, were born here, who grew up here, who should know better? How do you deal with that? What do you do about that? Do you have a right to be concerned about that? Do you have a right to do anything about it? And to my Republican friends, especially those in the party hierarchy, I mean, you've heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. And now I'm not necessarily talking about the Republican voters, the people living out in the hinterland, but the people in the party, the people who run the party, the people who are sitting in desks behind chairs, making votes and writing bills. Cowards. Every goddamn one of them are a bunch of cowards. The few that show any backbone at all are usually ostracized and shunned by the rest of the party. I mean, I don't even know, frankly, why a Republican Party exists anymore. They're certainly not the antithesis of the Democrats. They just roll over whenever the Democrats go boo. It's like, oh my God, he said boo. And then what am I supposed to do now? You're a bunch of damn cowards. I got no use for any of them. And I used to believe strongly in voting, in my right to vote. And I still believe I have a right to vote, although, frankly, I believe my vote is a waste of time anymore. Because even if the votes are counted correctly, and even if a Republican, in some rare instances, does seem to win something, they don't do a damn thing. They just find a place to curl up in the corner and whimper and suck on their thumb. And go, I don't want to say anything mean because then the media will say bad things about me and people won't like me and I won't get invited to all the cool parties. So watching this show last night, I'm like, oh, God, what? You know, most of you who are on my page on a regular basis know that last year I had a mild ischemic stroke. Okay. So I had some issues for a while with language. My speech was not where I would like it to be. I like to think that for the most part, I've recovered from that. But it does make you think, you know, and you're human. As a human, if something bad like that happens to you, You start contemplating things. You start thinking about the possibilities, what could have happened. And so mortality comes into the things that maybe you didn't think about before. Because, most Americans, we're superhuman, right? Nothing bad's ever going to happen to me. And then something bad does happen. And then you have to start thinking about shit that you don't want to think about. I really do hope if I have survived beyond that stroke this long, if I hope to survive any longer, I hope it is not simply to be around to see the destruction of the United States of America. I really do. That thought occurs to me more often now than I ever thought it would. But in watching that show last night, I thought, man, how did we sink so low? And it's not because of an attack from the outside. It's not like our military and law enforcement and our politicians swear an oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And yet here we are. Why do we even make people take that oath anymore? Why, especially politicians? What does it mean? What's the point of it? They don't adhere to it. Look at Spanberger. She said she swore the same oath. Spanberger swore that oath. Jay Jones swore that oath. What the hell's the Muslim woman's name? The lieutenant governor. I can't even think of her name now. Shows you how important she is to me. Anyway, they all swore the same oath. And then immediately, boom, started violating it. So then, well, yeah, I know I swore that oath, but I didn't really mean it. You don't really expect me to believe that stuff, do you? I mean, it's a formality. If I'm taking this office, I have to raise my hand and say that oath. Do I have to mean it? Obviously not. If I don't do it, if I fail that oath, if I purposely ignore that oath, will I suffer any consequences as a result? Well, apparently, as long as you're promoting the correct agenda in the eyes of voters, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can lie as much as you want. You can lie about whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. And it can be in direct violation of that oath, in direct violation of that Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And it doesn't matter because nothing's going to happen to you. Here in Virginia, unfortunately, we don't have a recall system where we can, like some states, I think California does. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think California has a recall where they can say, hey, that governor, we voted for that guy and he said he was going to do X, Y, and Z, but he's not doing that. So we need to get rid of him and get somebody else. Get the voters out there. Let the voters be heard. We need to get rid of that guy and find someone else who's going to do what he says he's going to do. We don't have that in Virginia, sadly. And I say sadly because even now, a lot of Democrats, from what I've seen in various news reports, a lot of Democrats are going, yo, Spanberger, what the fuck? You said you were going to do this. You're going to reduce the cost of living. You're going to make the cost of living cheaper and easier for people here in Virginia. And then you immediately decide to raise over 50 taxes. Explain that. Make it make sense. And of course, those of us who do, in fact, care about rights, constitutional rights, written down and codified rights, are looking at this stuff like with the Second Amendment and going, and for all you liberals who hear me and see this and think, well, it's only for gun safety. We're trying to prevent people from getting hurt. No, you're not. That's not what this is about. You damn well know it. So stop pretending. I know you'd like to believe that we're as stupid as you and the other Democrat voters are, but we're not. We see what's going on. We know what it's all about. Nothing that Spanberger and her ilk have proposed will in any way affect criminals. It's not going to stop the people who are out here ignoring and disobeying the laws. That's not what it's about. It's not what it has ever been about. And this gets back to understanding why we have a Second Amendment. Now, I'm not here to go into the history of all that. If you don't know the history by now, it's because you don't want to know it. You just want to keep your eye, put the blinders on and cover your ears. I can't hear you. I didn't hear you. I don't know what you're talking about. You know damn well why we have a Second Amendment. And it's exactly because of people like Spanberger and her ilk in the General Assembly and their propensity, as has been the case with governments throughout history, to take away your rights, to take away your individual liberty, and to make you wards of the state, to make you slaves. And so the founding fathers decided, well, how does one respond to that? How does one fight that? If voting doesn't work, if you can't go to the polling place and say, no, let's get rid of that guy and get rid of this one and vote for this guy. This guy's, he's promising to do certain things that will advance liberty. If you can't do that, what else do you have? What other recourse is there? If you've got people who purposely and directly violate the Constitution, violate your rights, try to take away your rights, then what are you supposed to do? Do you think voting is going to fix that? Here in Virginia, Virginians, fellow citizens, do you think the Republican Party is going to fix that? They've already proven what cowards they are. Hell, look at the gerrymandering thing going on now. Now, how many commercials, advertisements have you seen about the gerrymandering bill and getting rid of that and voting against it versus the Democrats and what they're coming out with? And of course, the low information voters out there on both sides will look at this and go, well, gosh, that they had a commercial with Obama in it, and Obama's our God. I mean, if Obama says to do something, we should do it. They're not going to look any deeper than that. It's surface, it's superficial. It's, there's a celebrity that I really like, and I like their TV show, and I like the movies they've been in, and they said I should vote a certain way, so I'm going to vote the way they said because I like that celebrity. So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're up against. You can't get people to dig any deeper. You can't get them to look into it and use any common sense. It's a foreign language to a lot of people. You got a better chance of getting somebody to speak Swahili than you do understanding the Constitution and understanding what rights really are versus what some people perceive them to be. So the key is, what are your rights? What are rights? How do you get rights? I mean, when I was watching that show last night, I mean, it's when they played the service songs, the mottos and songs for the Army and the Navy, Air Force, Marines. You see all the old veterans standing up in recognition of their service songs. I don't know if I'm allowed to or not. Somebody help me out here. And seriously, I'm asking my veteran friends. My father was in the U.S. Marine Corps back during the Korean War era. He didn't fight. He was stationed at Lejeune. He was quartermaster sergeant, but he was in the Marines. When they played the Marine Corps song, is it appropriate for me to stand? Is that allowed? I'm asking because, frankly, I just don't know. I didn't serve, but my father did. So, am I allowed? Is it ethical, permitted for me to stand in recognition of his service? I'm just curious. I'd like to know. But again, the sadness I experienced last night, maybe I'm not supposed to think about it. Maybe I'm thinking too much, too deeply about things that I shouldn't be thinking about. Maybe I should just accept it for what it is. It was an upbeat, uplifting night. And I'm not supposed to think beyond that. I'm not supposed to care about that other stuff. And I don't know. Maybe it's just my personality type. I do think about those things. I do think about the irony of celebrating 250 years of America and a lot of its roots here in Virginia, while we have a communist sitting here in Richmond running our government, and while we have a bunch of communists in the General Assembly who do not give a single shit about America or our rights or the Constitution. You think about the sacrifices throughout the history of this country, and make no mistake, I'm not going to stand here and tell you, oh, America's perfect. We've never done anything bad or anything wrong. We've always been the good guys. No, I'm not going to tell you that. And anybody with half a brain knows that's not true. But can you think of a better place? Is there somewhere else you'd rather be? There are a lot of countries on this planet Earth. Where else would you like to be right now? And I'm not talking about nice weather. Oh, I'd like to be in Tahiti. Beautiful weather, nice sunsets, the ocean lapping on the shore. No, where else would you rather be where you can experience the freedom that you have here? I'd be curious to know where that place is. I've read a few books. I've watched a few documentaries in my time. And I haven't found that place yet. At least not that in my eyes, in my mind, represents what America was founded for. So if you know where that place is, would you please tell me? I'd be curious to know. So the show last night, and I posted a couple of videos. They're on my page if you want to look at them. Of course, limited battery time on. I can't record everything that I would like to, but I tried to pick out the things that had particular appeal for me. So they're up there. I enjoyed the show. They had a lot of different people there. They had a group there. Let me see. I'm going to go through the program here. So I want to make sure I remember the names right. Yeah, come on, Floyd. The Kilty Band of York, different pipes and drum groups. Kilgore College Rangerettes. Now, some of you old farts like me remember the old Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders when they had those little white cowboy hats and the short skirts with the cowboy boots, and they would dance around and do different choreography and always had a pretty smile on their face. Well, the Kilgore College Rangerettes were there last night, and they're very reminiscent of those old Cowboys cheerleaders. King's Color Squadron of the Royal Air Force. And I'm probably going to say this wrong, forgive me. Lee Kim Young Sagang Dance Company of Chungnam National University, Republic of Korea. The Republic of Korea Army Band and Honor Guard Battalion. And let me say something about those Koreans. Holy shit, can those guys jump? They were doing a demonstration of Taekwondo where they were literally jumping, and I'm not kidding, you had to be at least 10 feet high. They were kicking boards off of hooks. And it was balsa wood, obviously. I mean, they were shattering it into 100 pieces, but to be able to get that high just to kick the thing and be under control. So, yeah, that was quite a show. The Rhodes, RHODE, Rhodes Academy of Irish Dance was there. The Royal Canadian Air Force, pipes and drums. So, and that's not all of them. That's just a few that are right here, come to mind on the pages here. So it was a good show. I enjoyed it. Susan enjoyed it. But, at the same time, I'm feeling a great sense of pride. This overwhelming sadness that I felt about where we are as a country, what our fellow citizens are allowing, and in fact, in many cases, encouraging to happen. They like to talk about rights, they like to talk about freedom, but they always leave out the word responsibility. Do I have a right to do certain things? Obviously, yes, I do. Do I have a responsibility to be mindful of how those rights affect others? Yes, I do. But the responsibility always gets shoved off over there somewhere. I have a right to do whatever I want, whenever, wherever, however, and how it affects other people that's their problem, not mine. And then you've got the governor of Virginia. Oh, you don't have Second Amendment rights. I'm sorry. Well, how about the criminal element out there? Do you think the criminals, the guys who spend their days robbing, raping, pillaging, taking from others, do you think they're going to obey your rules and laws, Abigail? Do you think they give a shit about you and your rules and your laws? Now, see, the reason what she wants to do is concerning is because it only affects you and me. Those of us who do not want to go to jail, those of us who do not see jail as an occupational hazard. I don't want to go to jail. I don't like the idea of going to jail. I shouldn't have to go to jail simply for exercising my right to own certain forms of property. And with the stroke of a pen, Abigail wants to just turn thousands of law-abiding Virginians into criminals. Not because of anything they've done, not because of anyone they've harmed, but simply because they own something she doesn't approve of. And this is the same one who swore an oath. Remember, they all swear the same oath against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, okay. Are any foreign entities attacking us directly? Now, we can make the case that Muslims are certainly doing their damnedest to overthrow our government. And that's another video for another occasion. How are they doing it? There's a plan, and many of you already know what that plan is. You see it yourself. But we're just supposed to pretend that doesn't exist, because if we bring it up, if we mention it, if we talk about it, well, you're Islamophobic. Of course, the Islamophobic, as with most phobics, its root word is in phobia. Phobia is an unreasonable fear of something. My fear of Islam is not unreasonable at all. It's based on knowledge and it's based on history. And more importantly, it's based on their own words, the things that they say they are doing and plan to do. That's not a phobia, that's reality. That's recognizing what's standing right in front of my face and looking right back at me and telling me certain things they plan to do, and then thinking, well, what am I supposed to do with that? How am I supposed to resist that? And then you've got people in this country, people who were born here, people who have lived here their entire lives, whether a long time or a short time, who are assisting in helping with that. They just, I would rather see the country, this is how these people think now. I would rather see the country fail and just be washed down the toilet of time than run the risk of someone calling me a bad name, like, oh, you're racist. Oh, you're some kind of phobic. Oh, you're xenophobic. Oh, you're whatever. Just whatever you do, don't call me a bad name. That would hurt my feelings. In the meantime, any rights you think you may have, whether it's in the Constitution or not, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to pretend that it doesn't exist. That's what we're up against. And again, I'm not getting any younger. If the shit is going to hit the fan, I wish it would hurry the hell up and hit it, so I'm at least somewhat capable of responding to it. I don't want to wait till I'm, I don't know if I'll get to be 90 years old, but I'll wait till I'm stooped and bent over and weak and can hardly get up and down the stairs, and then all of a sudden the shit hits the fan and I'm going to go, damn it. Why couldn't this have happened 20 years ago? But that's who we're dealing with. That's what we're up against. And all that show last night did, as entertaining as it was, it is simply brought to the forefront what we're up against and how sad it is, knowing as I do the history of our country, good and bad. I have no illusions about the bad things that have happened in this country. But I also know that on a meter, on a scale of what's good, what's bad, what's not good, what's not bad, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. At least here we have a system by which we can make some changes. We can get better. We have evolved. Some cultures among us, Islam, have not evolved and are not as tolerant and forgiving as many of you think you are. And yet many of you are assisting that culture. For no other reason that I can think of other than you don't want to be called bad names. So anyway, they'll do it again next year. They'll have another show. The theme will be something different perhaps, but if you're interested in going to the International Tattoo, then contact the Virginia Arts Festival. They're the folks you get the tickets from, and I would recommend it. And again, I asked the question earlier, So just to remind you, my veteran friends, when the Marine Corps song is played, is it considered proper or improper for me as the son of a Marine to stand in recognition? Again, I'm just curious. I don't know what the rules are for something like that. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up and point those things out to you. So enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later.